My name is Brady Duncan, and I'm here with you today to talk about the 24th Amendment to the United States Constitution, passed in 1964. What this amendment actually did is very simple. It prohibited the imposition of poll taxes as a requirement for voting in federal elections across the entire country, whether they be for a representative, a senator, or the president. See, after the American Civil War, many freed African-American families were able to, of course, exercise some political and legal freedoms and autonomy for a time, but not many were able to accrue a great deal of liquid wealth, cash, right? Many still lived and worked as subsistence farmers, trying to work the land for enough food to feed themselves, their families, and their communities, with accumulation of wealth sometimes being a bit slow, which was not at all uncommon for people in the Southeast who did not own a large amount of land. So, when white supremacist governments came to power later in the 1800s, they put in place poll taxes intended deliberately to disenfranchise, deprive voting rights of Black Americans throughout their states. And they did this while carving out exceptions for poor white Southerners, who were also very large in number, as the Southeast had a large number of people living below the poverty line at the time. These exceptions included allowing people to vote if their grandfathers could vote, that is, before the Civil War, or if they demonstrated a sharp, deep understanding of American law and history in context by answering questions about passages the Constitution read to them. In practice, these tests were never graded fairly and were decided almost entirely on the color of an applicant's skin. So poll taxes were used to strip loads and loads of Black Americans from the political franchise they had been guaranteed. And unfortunately, through the mid-1900s, they were upheld by the Supreme Court in a series of rulings. By 1964, with the absolute zenith of the African-American civil rights movement upon the country, and with the passage of the Civil and Voting Rights Acts being imminent, Congress did pass a constitutional amendment that prohibited the imposition of poll taxes on any federal election, meaning that people could vote for president or other federal officers without having to pay 1 red cent. That's very important for a couple of reasons. Firstly, Congress came to the decision, quite rightly, that poll tax laws in existence in the country at that time were driven entirely by racial prejudice and a desire to exclude people from the franchise based on their ethnicity, and not actually on their amount of wealth. Additionally, it also established a precedent that would be used in a Supreme Court case 2 years later, in 1966, to strike down all poll taxes at all levels throughout the United States, including those required previously for local and regional elections. What this means is, you, as a voter within the United States, cannot be made to pay a fee in exchange for the privilege of casting a ballot. That doesn't mean that you may not have to meet certain financial requirements or obligations to vote, like, say, if you have unpaid parking tickets, you may not be able to vote in your city if they have ordinances that require you to be up on all of your debts in order to vote in their elections, but merely that the government can never impose a fee specifically for voting again. And this was a landmark change that broke down one of the last serious economic barriers to voting on the federal level.